Hi, welcome to A Little Bit Scattered. I'm just noticing that my hair is kind of going wonky. Uh, Welcome to A Little Bit Scattered. I'm Becky, and this is my second podcast, although I'm not really sure why we call it podcast. It's more like a vlog. But welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm excited. It was fun to do my first episode last week, and so I'm ready to do another one. I have lots to share with you, so I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to talk about some finished objects, works in progress. But what I'm most excited to talk about is you can see behind me is my dyeing. So continuing that process from last time, and I want to update you on that. So let's get started. Let's see, today is Tuesday, September, I'm looking at my calendar up here, September 10th. And we're in school for a week. It feels like we're getting in sync with our new schedule, which is nice. And yeah, I've had a good morning. I work on Mondays, so Tuesdays are my day off, and then I work Wednesdays and Thursdays. So I actually have Tuesdays and Fridays off, which is really lovely and gives me time to do this. So I think Tuesdays are going to be my day to do podcasts or vlogs. And I got up this morning and was thinking about my menu. I try to do my menu planning in the morning because if I try to do that in the afternoon, it just doesn't happen. I get overwhelmed pretty easily. And so it helps to have an idea of what I'm going to make in the morning. And if I can tackle some of it, then I feel just on top of it. And then when dinner time comes, which is when I'm kind of hitting that lull in the day, most of it's done and ready. And I also have my niece and her husband over on Tuesdays. We have a standing dinner. She just works up the street from us. She works at a school, and so she's really close by. And so I just thought, let's just have a weekly dinner together, which is super fun. So I try to really be on top of my meals on Tuesday. So today, just if you're wondering, I'm going to make spaghetti and homemade French bread and a green salad. And I haven't decided if I'm going to have time to do any dessert, but I have a lot of fruit. I have a lot of apples and plums. And so I'd like to kind of do something with that and use those up. I'm choosing spaghetti because I did some canning this weekend and I canned tomatoes. So canning, for those of you who don't can, it's so easy. And I love canning because this year is the first year that I've actually, my aunt let me plant lettuce. My husband and I plant our tomato plants over at her house. She just gets a lot more sun. She's a great garden patch. And so we planted 5 bushes all together, and we're sharing them with her. So we go over there every week and pick tomatoes. And so these are the tomatoes from that. This is the first year. Usually I go to a U-Pick place and pick a bunch of tomatoes and then can them. So it's kind of fun to actually pick tomatoes that we've grown ourselves. And it's great because you just know what's in the tomatoes. They're fresh. Canning keeps them really fresh. I think they're just really flavorful. I like to can the Romas because they're a little less watery. They're great for spaghetti sauce, which is what I'm making today. Soups in the winter. It's so great just to start with a good kind of tomato base, and you can add whatever you want. Sauces, pizza sauce. My daughter is a vegetarian, so it's really easy to just pull that out and make a marinara sauce for her. So it's great. And then while I'm just talking about canning, I also was able to can some pears. And this funny little black thing, you're probably wondering what in the world, is a vanilla bean and then some peppercorns. And I found a recipe on a blog. I think the blog is called Put Up or Shut Up. And I just bookmarked it in my phone, and it is a great recipe. Instead of just, when you can fruit, you typically just do the fruit and a simple syrup, and that's it. But this has pear brandy, peppercorns, and a vanilla bean. And it's so good, and my kids love it. And it just has a little extra flavor to it that I just love. And it's a favorite in the winter when we want fruit, and it's just easy to grab. So did some canning this weekend. And I wanted to, well, let me start with finished objects first. I didn't actually finish anything this week. I made some progress on some things, which I'll show you, but I did want to show you one thing. Yeah, I'm just going to show you one today. And this is something that I started in the spring and finished this summer. And it is the Boho Style Mosaic Shawl by Irene Lin. Here's the picture. Part of my motivation for knitting this, I shared last week the hipster shawl, which I love and I wear all the time, but I wanted something bigger to wrap around my shoulders. Like, I get up early in the morning. It's just my time alone to knit or read or listen to a podcast or just sit and drink coffee. It's just my kind of sacred time. And so in the winter, it's so nice to just be able to pull a shawl over. And I just wanted something big to kind of wrap around me. And so that was my first motivation, is I wanted something big. And then I loved the color work in this. I thought it was just beautiful. And I've never done mosaic until I did this. So this is my first mosaic. And I just loved the look of it. So my first thought was finding the yarn. And as I talked about last time, I've been dyeing yarn. And I basically got a bunch of bare wool that was worsted weight and just was experimenting with dyeing. I just wanted to try different processes, and just kind of, I gave myself a lot of room and a lot of skeins of yarn to just practice with. So two of the things I practiced on, these are the results. So this is one skein that I did, and it has navies and oranges, browns. I think that might be all. There might be another kind of shade of blue in there too. Really liked how this turned out. Another one that I was just playing around with colors. This is much darker and more vibrant. Oranges, browns, grays in there. And so I just had a skein of each of these. And in the pattern, that's all that some of the color work needed. And so I was like, these can go together because they both have the orange and the brown in there and a little gray. No, I don't have any gray in this one, but brown. So I just thought, okay, these would tie together. So then I thought, okay, now I want to think about the main color and the trim color. So the trim color, I wanted to do like a brown, like a chocolatey mocha, maybe a little darker brown. So I started with that, and this is what I came up with. And so that goes with that. So I was like, oh, this is great. Then I was trying to figure out what to do for the main color, because that's the majority of the shawl is this main color. And with these colors, I was thinking, first of all, it made like a sand color, like almost a khaki sand color. And so I went to my dyeing studio it's in my laundry room. It's a fancy name for my laundry room. And I dyed up some yarn, and I've learned with painting, because I've done a lot of painting in interior design. My rule is the moment I put paint on the wall, if I don't love it, don't go with it. Try another color. And I should have kept that in mind when I did the first dyeing, because I knew when I dyed that kind of sand color, it went too yellow and it kind of turned into a buttery yellow, which is fine. It's a pretty color, but it wasn't what I was looking for. It wasn't what I had in my mind. And I should have just stopped there. But I was so excited to get started on the shawl that I went ahead with the dye. I dried it and washed it, dried it, and started knitting on it. And I'm knitting and I'm not liking it. And I keep knitting. And isn't it funny? I feel like we go through stages of denial with knitting, or at least I do, where it's like, oh no, it's okay. You know, if I make a mistake, it's all right. I won't notice it. And then I see it. And finally I'm like, okay, I got to take it out. Same thing with, I feel like with dyeing too. Like I just didn't love it. And yet I just wanted to knit the shawl basically. And so that overrode my common sense in terms of the color. So I finished the main part and I knew I didn't love it. So as I was knitting it, I was like, I'm just going to finish this before I start the color work. I'm going to do something I've never done before, which is going to finish this shawl piece. And then I'm going to dye the shawl piece and knit up. And then I'll dye an extra skein of yarn with it, so it will all be the same color. I was talking to my daughter, and she actually gave me the idea of going more like burnt yellow or orange. And so that's what I ended up doing. I went orange. So here's the shawl. It ended up, I think, working out perfectly. It's a very, it's very fall-ish, you know, with the orange and the brown. But I also love that it has the navy blues in there and the gray. So it looks fabulous with jeans. And it's so big, if you can see. So I was really happy. This ended up dyeing up all knit just fine, if you can see. And then the yarn that I continued with here was a little bit darker, but I think it still worked. So that was my adventure in dyeing. Really happy with this. Oh, and then there's, I don't know if you could see this. There's tassels at the end. Actually, I like this tassel better. This has too much on it. I need to lessen that, but it's a big old chunky tassel, which is nice because when you put it on, it hangs. Creates some weight to hang off your shoulders really well. And let's see, I'll show you, at least in part. You can still wear this as a big old shawl. Maybe going to a football game. You can kind of put this on. Here, let me tip my camera a little bit here. So yeah, you can still kind of make it a big shawl like this, or just wear it over your shoulders, which is how I usually wear it, just because it is so large and was what I was looking for to begin with, which is really fun. So it's cozy, it's perfect in the mornings. I've already been wearing it. I said last week that September is one of the most beautiful months in Portland, Oregon. Still stays really warm, and on Sunday, it just like started raining and it's gray, and I feel like fall's here in one day. It just changed immediately. So it wasn't the nice gradual, still sunny, but kind of cool, and the leaves are changing. It just like instantly changed. So I've been wearing this week because it's just kind of been a little chillier. Hopefully the weather will be warmer again. It's supposed to get back into the 70s and be sunny. Actually, I'm going to hold that because it'll fall off. So that's my one finished object that I wanted to show. And then let's see. Oh, I did want to show you my progress. So my whips, the progress, I didn't have a whole lot of time because I was canning and dyeing, and that took up most of my week, most of my weekend before I had to get back to work again. So the big push in knitting, I really just focused on one thing this week, and that is the shawl that I showed you. It's based on the Kerchief Age of Brass and Steam Kerchief by Orange Flower Yarn. Let me show this again. I showed this last week, and I just want to show you my progress. Oops, So I started with the light gray, and then the real dark gray, and then the barn red color. And I'm just going to finish off with this light gray so it ties that in. And my hope is to finish it today and get it blocked so that I can give it to, it's a gift, it's a birthday gift for our friend and office manager. And her birthday's on Sunday, but the last day I see her is Thursday, so I need it done by Thursday. So to block it tonight so it dries tomorrow, and then I can have it hopefully Wednesday or Thursday to give to her for her birthday. So this is my soul project, and as I said last week, the pattern's just a little, and I'm just continuing to increase until I basically run out of yarn, and it's using up all my little lovely Tweety yarn, which I like, and I like how it's turning out, and I think it's going to be a good size shawl. She wears a lot of those colors, which is what made me pick those for her. And she works in our office, and our AC kind of gets cold, and so she always has like a sweater or something on the back of her chair. So I thought, oh, this could be an alternative to that, and she can just throw it on when she's working or whenever she wants to wear it. So excited about that. That's really all that I was focusing on for whips. So because what I want to talk to you about is, oh wait, you know what? There was one more thing I tried just because I couldn't resist. So as soon as I'm finished with the shawl, I'm going to go ahead and start working on, oh, I printed it off, but I never grabbed it off the printer. The shawl that I or the Afghan that I talked about last week. And it's for our family room. We have a leather couch, and I think I've purchased 3 throws, and all of them keep meandering their way up to our kids' bedrooms, and our kids have just kind of, each of them has claimed a throw. So I'm like, fine, you guys can have those throws for your room, and then I'm going to make this for the downstairs, and it can't leave the couch or the family room. And it's called the Tilework Afghan, and it's by Kerin Dimeler-Laurence. Dimeler-Laurence. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. It's on Knit Picks, and it's also on Ravelry. And so I just wanted to knit up one of the tiles just to see how the colors are going to work together. So here's the first tile. And basically, and I'll show you as I progress, but basically you do 4 of these and they all hook together, and that makes one bigger tile that then you seam with other bigger tiles. And I don't know how many of those you do, but these are nice because what you end up doing is you cast on half the stitches and then you pick up along the edges. And so it naturally hooks together. Anytime I can knit something rather than seam it, I like that. I'm just not a good seamer. I feel like it doesn't ever look very neat. I'm never really happy with my seaming. And so I love to just find patterns. That's why I do mostly seamless, top down, or bottom up if they're seamless sweaters. Just as long as I don't have to do a lot of seaming at the end, that's preferable to me, because I think I still have like 1 or 2 sweaters that I did the pieces that needed to be seamed, and they're still just in my storage that never have been seamed together, just because it intimidates me, and I don't like the look afterwards, and I feel like yeah, it's just harder. So that's why I chose this Afghan, because most of it is you just pick up and keep knitting, and then the seaming is minimal, and it's done in a bulky weight, and so I think the seaming will be a little easier because you can really just see the stitches to seam together. So I'm liking the color so far, and I'll keep you updated on that. So that was the only other whip I had. All right, so I just knocked a bunch of things over, so 1 second. Sorry about that. So my dyeing, this is what I want to really focus on today. So last week I opened a box of yarn from Wool to Dye For, all these different kinds of yarn. And so my whole strategy in getting that is to really test dye those yarns and figure out what ones I like, what I like to work with in terms of the dyeing. I know basically what kind of yarns I like to knit with, but dyeing is a whole nother breed or animal. And so I really wanted to test dye the different yarns. And honestly, the hardest part was coming up with how I was going to do this. Like, when you're dyeing, you have to keep your ratios the same so that you can recreate things. They're not going to be identical, but you want to keep it pretty similar. So what I call them, I keep notes on everything I do, and I kind of call them my recipes, just because you're really measuring how much water you're dyeing, how much water you're putting in your solution for your dye, how much mordant you're working with. So it's like a little bit of this recipe. So to test it, I decided to use the Sheila sock, which is from Wool to Dye For, and it's a superwash merino. I thought that would be a good, oh wait, you know what? No, sorry, before I get to that, I dyed all 4 of them in the same color in the same time so that I could kind of compare and contrast. So the first one I'm going to show you is the diamond sock. And I did some little tiny skeins. And this one, let's see, it's kind of out of focus. Sorry about that. It won't focus. There we go. This one was a little too stripy for me. I didn't love the way the dye, I did a flash dye, which is basically you just have hot water and you put it in. I think I did pre-soak it, but you just dip it in quickly and take it out quickly. And so it doesn't have time to saturate. And I wanted to do that because that's one of the techniques I really like to use. And so most yarn dyes up really well when you just give it enough time and saturate it fully. So that's why I wanted to test it this way. So on the diamond sock yarn, the next one was the Sheila sock that I was just about to show you. Let's see here. So this one did better, and I like how the color was able to soak in pretty quickly on that one. So that, out of the two sock weights, that would be my favorite. And I did a cashmere DK. And again, I thought the dye took really well to that beautiful yarn with the cashmere in it. And then my favorite, which is just 100% wool, but it's the BFL DK. And this is my favorite application of the dye. Again, it's intended to have that kind of stripy look because the way I dyed it, it's not fully saturated, but I wanted to do that. So out of all of those, that was my favorite, was the BFL 100% DK weight. So that was fun to test that out and to kind of get a sense of which yarns I'm more drawn to. So I I have this thing with my dyeing where if I have a vat full of dye, I don't like to just dump it out. It feels like a waste. And so, of course, after testing this, I probably just tested it with too much dye. I didn't need that much for those little tiny skeins. So anyway, I had one more worsted weight bare yarn skein in my stash that I thought, I'm going to just use up this dye. And so I did, and look how beautiful. Let's see. It's kind of the same color I talked about last week, which is it's more green than blue, showing up a little more blue. It's really like a sea glass color, and I just love this. So pretty. So that was just with what leftover dye, which is super fun because you just never know what gradient you're going to get with that. All right. So the testing done, then I started thinking about my dyeing process. And I'm so visual that I felt like I needed a test of yarn, like the dye on yarn, because, I have these tubes of dye, but you can't, it's powder, so you can't really tell. And then you can put it in water and make a solution, which is that's helpful. But you can't really tell how it's going to look on the yarn and the different applications that you use. And so I thought, I have this bare wool. I think I'm going to take advantage of it and create a sample of all the different dyes that I have and do what I did back there. So I took the Sheila sock, which is this 100% superwash merino, and this is what it looks like bare. And I just did little tiny skeins of yarn so that I could have left over enough to make a couple, like 4 minis out of this. I think I still have 200 yards here. And I was looking up online, and most people say that a mini is about 25 yards. So that would make a good 4 minis that I can experiment with. And then, so then my thought, just working through my thought process, it feels a little daunting to think about, okay, how am I going to dye every color? And it's a long process because you do this whole vat of dye basically for one little tiny skein. And I didn't want to waste it. So then I think it was my husband's suggestion. He's like, well, why don't you do some fiber while you're at it too? Because I have fiber. I'm getting my label. I ordered fiber just from Knit Picks again to test out fiber. And this is it's called Stroll Roving, and it is 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon top. So that's my fiber. So that's what's up on the top there is all my fiber that I dyed. So let me go grab 1 or 2 and I'll show you. Okay, so I decided how much yarn I wanted to do and created little mini skeins of that length for all the dyes. And I have 22 different dyes. And then I wanted to have a sense of the different saturation gradients. And so I basically came up with a formula that did, more saturated to less saturated up here, so that I can take this little skein, and this is in my color Sea Spray, which is the same that I used for this. And you can see how the lighter gradient was, because it was leftover, it wasn't as intense. And so that just gives me a good sense of, here, helps. When I'm choosing the color, I can say, oh, I want this color in my skein. And so I'm going to do a lighter ratio of dye to water, more diluted, and then this less diluted. Or I can do it with time as well, keep it longer to saturate, where this could be a faster application of dye. So took my skeins. It literally took me all weekend to do this. I pre-soaked them. So I had these little, I even twisted them up into little mini skeins, and I pre-soaked them. Then I created my ratio. I created my recipe for the dye, and had to be the same for each dye so that it would all be the same kind of gradient. And then I did timing on like how long I kept the bottom in versus the top, created and just created a formula. And then after that, once that was done, I hung that to dry, and then I stuck in my fiber. Which is just beautiful. And so that gives me, again, I kept it in there only for, I think I did like 5 minutes. But it soaked up most of the dye. And it also gives me a really good sense of, when I'm dyeing fiber, the different kind of colors that I can get out of the one main dye, depending on how light I want it or how dark I want it. So it turned out to be really beautiful. This is really great fiber. So 22 times I did this. I was down in my little studio. My youngest son asked my husband, where's mom? She's down dying. She's downstairs dying. And my son thought that was funny. Okay. So then I had to come up with a way to display it and label it. So got these cute little labels so that I can keep track of each die. And then I just used push pins to hang these so that I can mix and match and kind of hold things up together in different colors so I can make decisions on what colors I want to put together. And then for the fiber, I had this, I don't know even where I got this from, but it's leather kind of string or twine, or I don't know what you would call it. And I just hooked it to the wall and then put clothespins to hold up each thing of fiber. And I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to write on the clothespin the name of the color just so I don't get those mixed up, because I'm going to be using them very visual and very tactile. So I'm going to be pulling things down and mixing them together when I'm deciding what colors I want to dye together. So very exciting. I'm really thrilled to have this. I'm really thrilled to kind of know what I want in terms of ordering yarn. I did look through, the other thing I worked on this weekend was I went through my Ravelry. Not really good about keeping my Ravelry up, so I'm intentionally focusing on that for a little bit. I need to take a lot more pictures of my finished objects and upload those and get that all current. But what I did go through was my queue. And so on my queue, I realized I had knit a bunch of things, so I needed to get those off of my queue. And then I ended up putting, I think I have like 32 things on my queue, which is a lot, but it's helpful because I've got the three, the library, my favorites, and my queue. And so library are things that I purchase. So that really should be after the queue, but sometimes there's free patterns, so I'll just go ahead and stick them in the library. My favorites are, I'm just going through Ravelry, I see something cute, I put it in my favorites. Then it sits in my favorites until I decide, ooh, I really, really like that. And that's going to be something I want to knit. And so that then goes in my queue. And then once I've decided I'm going to knit that, then I'll purchase the pattern. And then, or I'll sign up for maybe being a test knitter for someone. And so then I'll move that into the library. And so I went through that and I was looking through my queue of all the things I want to do and just noted what the patterns that I like, since I'm just basing it on me, and what weight yarns are most often used in patterns. So sweater patterns tend to be DK or worsted, and obviously sock is fingering or sock. Shawls are fingering, DK, and worsted. And so I think I'm going to narrow it down to, if I'm going to do 3, I would do a fingering, DK, and worsted. If I'm going to order, now I'm talking ordering a large sum, like I don't know how many yards, but I'll figure that out and let you know. So it's going to be an investment in this dyeing. So I don't want to just, I might just start with 2. And if that's the case, I might do fingering for sure, probably worsted. I don't know, DK and worsted. That's a hard one because I love knitting sweaters, and a lot of sweaters are made out of DK. And then there's sport too. I've noticed a lot of sport, but really worsted, DK. So it's going to be harder to figure out if I just order 2 big orders of yarn. It's going to be hard to decide which ones. If I do 3, which is my preference, but that's a lot of yarn. I'll do fingering DK and worsted. So yeah, that's kind of my thought process on that. And that's the next step, is figuring out which ones I want to order and then ordering whatever the minimum amount of bulk yarn, probably the minimum, and then get that ordered and have that come back, and then start figuring out what colors I want to dye. Eventually get them online and sell them to you all. So I'd love to hear from you if you have any input on this decision-making process where I am now in the process. I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts, your, everything from colors to weight, what you prefer, what you like, what you wish you saw more of when you're looking for hand-dyed yarn. Just any kind of feedback you can give me would be really great and really helpful. So yeah, so that's where I am in that process. I think that's it for today. Trying to think if there's anything else I've been thinking about. Yeah, it's just been a week of dyeing, and so yeah, once I get this order in, I have 2 skeins of DK, so I might play around with that and do some dyeing, and see what I come up with, kind of like what I ended up doing with this. The other thing that I haven't done yet, but I want to, is get a pattern and then figure out what colors I want to do for the pattern, and then kind of go the reverse way. Usually I dye first and then I find a pattern that goes with the yarn. And this time I want to try getting a pattern first and then dyeing to go with that pattern. So I'm going to have to pick a pattern, probably one of the ones that are on the top of my queue, and then figure out what color yarn I want. I want to show you eventually just my sweater drawer. I have a drawer of all my hand knit sweaters, and I've noticed that it's interesting when you put them all together. I think that's a good thing for everyone to do. Just kind of lay all your sweaters out and just see what you tend toward. I told you last week, I do tend toward this color a lot. So I have 2 sweaters. I don't know if I have 3 sweaters. I might have 3. Anyway, in this color, I'm like, I don't need any more sweaters in this color. I mean, yeah, they're very different styles, but I don't need that many sweaters in this color. So it's just good. And then I'm really drawn to red. I love red. And so I have a couple red sweaters. And so I'm just thinking, okay, I want to branch out and push myself to knit with other colors. And then the other thing is just noticing I've done a lot of really kind of plain, I don't say that in a negative way. They're just more just simple construction. And so I would love to add more cabled sweaters and more textured sweaters and more colorful sweaters. So I do have something to show you next week that's very colorful, and it's way out of what I've knit so far. And I love that. I love that I'm kind of pushing myself to do something beyond what I normally do. But it's just really good. I've done just kind of real kind of tailored basic sweaters, couple with like mohair, which is really pretty. It gives kind of this, halo with the sweaters. But yeah, I'm ready to up the color and up the texture of my sweater. So that helps me in deciding what sweater is next, because I do like to have a sweater on the needles. Right now I don't, and I'm really itching to get a sweater on the needles because I love making sweaters. That's probably my favorite thing to knit. They take longer, so it's sometimes more satisfying after doing a couple sweaters to do quicker shawls, socks, hats, things like that. But at the end of the day, I think I'm more of a sweater knitter, and I love that process, especially when they're seamless and top down. So, and yeah, and that's gonna inform my dyeing too, because I need to dye. I'm going to really aspire to dye in yarn quantities that will work for sweaters. I feel like a lot of hand dyers do just 1 or 2 skeins for shawls and hats. But I'd like to be able to offer, something like this gorgeous in 8 skeins of yarn that would all go together. So that's it. So I hope you enjoy your Tuesday or whatever day it is that you're watching this. And thanks again for coming by. I would love to hear from you. So really, even if you don't typically comment, I would just highly encourage you to comment, because your feedback will help me tailor this blog or podcast to doing things that will, that you end up liking, or stay away from things that you're not so interested in. So yeah, if I could encourage you to kind of step out of your norm and put a comment, that would be great. And I will see you hopefully next week. Thanks. Take care.